War of the Batons, the Bellum Batonianum, Latin for War of the Batons, was a series of military conflicts between an Illyrian alliance and the Roman Empire. The rising began among the Daesitiates of what is now central Bosnia under their leader Bato, but were soon joined by the Breuci and numerous other Illyrians. The 4-year war, which lasted from AD 6 to 9, saw huge concentrations of Roman forces in the area. On one occasion, the legions and their auxiliaries in a single camp, with whole armies operating across the Western Balkans and fighting on more than one front. On 3 August AD 8, the Breuci of the Sava Valley surrendered, but it took another winter blockade and a season of fighting before the surrender of the Daesiates came in AD 9. It took the Romans 3 years of hard fighting to quell the revolt, which was described by the Roman historian Suetonius as the most difficult conflict faced by Rome since the Punic Wars 2 centuries earlier. All Illyrians were now subject to Roman rule. In the reign of Nero, AD 54 to 68, the ancient city of Aphrodisias in Asia Minor celebrated the victories of the Caesars with a monument incorporating figured reliefs depicting the imperial triumphs over the individual peoples. Among the several Illyrian groups singled out were the Japodes, Dardanians, Pannonians, Daesitiates, and Pyrrhistae. History background. The 2nd century BC saw the subjection of various parts of Illyria by the Romans, such as Histria in 177 BC and the Ardean Kingdom in 168 BC. Next came the interior of the Western Balkans, accumulating in the wars with the Daesitiates in 156 and 78 BC, and in 129 BC against the Japodians. Caesar's assassination encouraged the Illyrians to regain their liberty. They refused to pay taxes and destroyed 5 cohorts of the army commanded by Vatinius, also killing the senator Baebius. The Roman Senate charged Marcus Junius Brutus, one of the assassins of Caesar, to lead the army in Illyria and Macedonia. In the winter of 42 BC, he marched from Greece at the head of the army, through roads covered by snow, doubtless coming along the Via Egnatia in order to appear by surprise before the walls of Dyrrhachium, sick with exhaustion and the cold. After this, Brutus took Apollonia and Bylis, pursuing and breaking the power of Gaius Antonius, who withdrew to Bothrodum. In 35 BC, Octavian was compelled to revisit Illyrian lands yet again, this time Dalmatia. At the head of 10 legions, he marched from the north and subjugated the Japodes, Liburnians, and Pannonians. The most difficult war proved to be with the Dalmatians, in which the young future emperor was wounded twice, as Suetonius writes, first in the knee with a stone from a slingshot, and later when a bridge fell during the siege of the Japodian city of Metallum. In that siege, Octavian saw with his own eyes the bravery of the Illyrians. After managing to conquer the upper part of the city, Octavian asked the inhabitants to surrender their weapons, but they collected their women and children and locked them in the council building, putting guards around it and ordering them to set the building on fire if the men were to suffer any harm. After taking these measures, they assailed the Romans in desperation, but since they were down below and the Romans above, they were badly broken and all were killed. Then the assembly guards set the building on fire, as they had been ordered, and many women and children were burned to death, and even more threw themselves on the fire, along with their children. Together with them, the city was burned so completely that although it had been a very large city, not a trace of it remained. War Illyrian Alliance. The revolt of 6 AD was one of the few occasions where different Illyrian peoples entered in a coalition against a common enemy. The main Illyrians who contributed to the alliance were the Daesitiates, Breuci, Dalmatae, Daesitiates, Pannonians, Pyrrhistae, Liburnians, and Japodes, the latter 2 fighting under an unknown leader. The Daesitiates were led by Bato the Daesitiate, while the Breuci were led by their king Pinnes and Bato the Breucian, their army commander. The uprising began spontaneously and spread quickly. In AD 6, several regiments of Daesitiates, natives of an area that now comprises central Bosnia and Herzegovina, led by Bato the Daesitiate, were gathered in one place to prepare to join Augustus's stepson and senior military commander Tiberius in a war against the Germans. Instead, the Daesitiates mutinied and defeated a Roman force sent against them. The Daesitiates were soon joined by the Breuci led by their king Pinus and their commander Bato the Breucian, inhabiting the region between the rivers Sava and Drava in modern Croatia. They gave battle to a second Roman force from Moesia, led by Caecina Severus, the governor of Moesia. Despite their defeat, they inflicted heavy casualties at the Battle of Sirmium. Bato the Daesitiate moved his forces against Salona. However, failing to take the city, he was forced to give up his plans and head south, reaching Apollonia in central Albania. The coalition was now joined by a large number of other Illyrian communities. At risk was the strategic province of Illyricum, recently expanded to include the territory of the Pannonians, who were subjugated by Rome in 12-9 BC. Illyricum was on Italy's eastern flank, exposing the Roman heartland to the fear of a rebel invasion. Panic struck Rome with rumors of some 800,000 Illyrian rebels, 200,000 of which were warriors, and 9,000 of those cavalry. Roman reinforcements. Augustus, fearing an Illyrian invasion of Italy, ordered Tiberius to break off operations in Germany and move his main army to Illyricum. Tiberius sent Marcus Valerius Messala Messallinus, the governor of Dalmatia and Pannonia, ahead with troops. The panic broke out in Rome, and Augustus raised a second task force under Tiberius's nephew Germanicus. He resorted to the compulsory purchase and emancipation of thousands of slaves in order to amass enough troops. This happened for the first time since the aftermath of the Battle of Cannae 2 centuries earlier. At one moment, in the winter AD 6-7, 10 legions were deployed, and an equivalent number of auxilia, 70 cohorts, 10 alae, and more than 10,000 veterans. In addition, they were assisted by a large number of Thracian troops deployed by their king Rheimatalces, a Roman amicus, ally, a grand total of some 100,000 men. AD 8-9, one of the decisive battles took place at the river Batons. Disagreements within the Breuci camp arose between Bato the Breucian and Pinus, the latter wanting to continue fighting, while the former doubting the capabilities of the inferior Illyrian army. On 3 August AD 8, Bato the Breucian encouraged the surrender of his troops, had the king enslaved to the Romans, who proclaimed him leader of the Breuci. Hearing of the surrender of the Breuci, Bato the Daesitiate journeyed to Pannonia and took Bato the Breucian as a prisoner. Bato the Breucian was later sentenced to death by the council. Failing to encourage the Breuci to join his army, Bato the Daesitiate was forced to return to Dalmatia to continue the war. Germanicus was sent against Bato the Daesitiate with a large and well-trained army. They faced further reverses on the battlefield and a bitter guerrilla war in the Bosnian mountains, but bitter fighting also occurred in southern Pannonia around Mons Almus, modern Fruška Gora near Sirmium. Bato the Daesitiate succeeded in capturing the cities of Splonum, Ceridium, and Rhetinium. The defeats of Germanicus caused Tiberius to come to the aid of the Roman army. The Romans soon captured one Illyrian city after another, eventually besieging Andetrium, where Bato the Daesitiate and his forces were positioned. After heavy casualties on both sides, Tiberius finally succeeded in taking the city. The final resistance took place in the city of Arduba. As the Roman legions were storming the city walls, the women threw themselves and their children into the fire that had engulfed the city. Facing defeat, Bato the Daesitiate surrendered to the Roman in 9 AD, asking for lives of his warriors to be spared. Asked by Tiberius why he had revolted against him, Bato the Daesitiate answered, "You Romans are alone to blame, because you sent the wolves to guard your flocks, and not shepherds." Bato the Daesitiate was finally sent to live in exile in Ravenna. Aftermath. The Romans, aside from committing atrocities during the war, split up Illyrian tribes into different groups from the ones they had previously composed. The administrative civitates of the Auxiliaries, Colapiani and Varsiani, were probably created from the Breuci. Other members of tribes were probably sold as slaves or deported to different locations, such as the Azali. The fighting of the Illyrian Revolt had lasting effects on Roman soldiers. Unhappy with their award of swampy and mountainous Pannonian lands for such harsh military service, and with abuses relating to their pay and conditions, Roman soldiers staged a mutiny in AD 14 after Augustus's death, demanding recompense. Tiberius, now the ruling emperor, dispatched his son Drusus to pacify the mutineers. Thanks for watching.